All right, this week's lesson on our story called Ada's Violin is about summarizing the text of a story. So, our I can statement is I can summarize the text of a story. Now, you might know it more as retelling the story. Retelling the story is the same as summarizing the story. It means that we tell somebody about the story and all the important events in order. And so you might remember this from when we've done step testing and I ask you to retell the story. That's the same as summarizing the story. And this is a skill that you will need to be able to um, possess or have so that you can understand a story better. When we can summarize the text and retell it to somebody else, then that means that we have really understood the story because we understand what the important parts are of the story. So the other thing that we want to include in our summary or our summarizing is we also want to include who the characters are and we want to include what they're like. So what are they like? And then we also want to include something about the setting of the story. Where and when does it take place? And I will do an example with you when we are done with the part of the story. I'm not going to read the whole thing today. We'll read it in 3 different parts this week. And the story is called Ada's Violin. And this is a story about a girl who lives in a small country in South America, and her village or town is in a very unusual place. And so this story is called Ada's Violin. Ada Rios grew up in a town made of trash. Every morning at dawn, Ada heard the first garbage trucks rumble and roll down the road to Coutura. Beep, beep, beep. Backing into the landfill, they tipped their loads up and crash. The trash came tumbling down, 1,500 tons each day. Ada and her friends watched as the ganqueros, recyclers, scrambled, tearing into plastic bags with long-handled hooks, pushing aside moldy produce and grabbing anything they could recycle or sell. The going rates? 5 cents for a pound of cardboard, 10 cents for a pound of plastic. This noisy, stinking, sweltering slum was not the most nurturing neighborhood. Ada watched, eyes wide, but she didn't say much. And yet she liked to imagine each garbage truck was a box full of surprises. One never knew what might be inside. Her father had found appliances, toys, perfumes, and antique watches. One woman even discovered a small box full of gold jewelry. Little did Ada know there was a bigger surprise waiting for her in the landfill. Every day when Ada's parents went to work, grandmother Miriam cared for Ada and her little sister Noelia. Grandma loved to sing rock and roll songs from the 1960s. The girls grew up to the tunes of the Beatles, Simon and Garfunkel, and Creedence Clearwater Revival. Ada loved to sing too, but only when no one was listening. Ada's dad brightened the night with songs and stories of great musicians. He turned up the radio and pointed out the sounds each instrument made. Ada heard one above all others. Zing went the strings of the violin. When the girls started school, Grandma returned to work as a recycler, collecting bottles and cans in the city. Classes let out at noon. Young Ada was in charge of Noelia until her parents were done with work. At first, the girls stayed close to home, playing with Grandma, Miriam's doggies, and making sand cakes in the dirt. Soon they joined their cousins, playing hide and seek or a game of handball in the streets. In time, they ventured farther afield, walking down to the bodega to get candy. But Ada noticed the teenagers hanging out in the alleys, grumbling about life in the landfill looming ahead. What would happen to them, to her, to her little sister? She watched as the older kids turned to gangs and got into fights. So we are going to stop the story there, and you will be filling out one of these retell sheets. So some of you might have the one on the right here, and some of you might have the one on the left. And so I'm going to work on the one on the left. To begin with, the characters. The main character is Ada, we know that. There's her sister, Noelia. There's her grandma. I'm going to make this print smaller. There's her grandma, Miriam. And then there's the recyclers. Now we also want to tell a little bit about the characters. So Ada, we might say something about her like she's curious. She's helpful. She is studious. We know that she goes to school. And I'm going to let you think about filling out the rest of this on your own. Now, the setting of the story is, we know that it takes place in a town called Coutura. I believe that's how it's pronounced. And I'm going to make sure that I look up the spelling. It is spelled C-A-T-U-E-U-R-A, Coutura. And that is a small town in South America, in a country in South America. It also takes place in a garbage dump, or you could say also in a landfill. It's also called a landfill. And when we think about the events in this story, one event that happened early is that Ada and her sister like to sing with her grandma. And Ada and her sister go to school. And that's all that's really happened so far. We know a little bit about the recyclers, but that would be more up into the description of the characters. And we know a little bit about the town that they live in, Coutura. We know that it might be a little bit dangerous. And we know that it's not always safe, partly because of the gangs, but partly because of all of the garbage that's around, and that it's kind of dirty or poor. Now, if you're filling out this sheet on the right, you can still fill out the characters right here, and the setting, and the beginning of the story. You can just combine these two sentences. So what happened at the beginning? You're going to be filling it out in Notability. I'll be posting a PDF file, and you can type your answers, or you can voice type your answers. You can use the voice option in Notability to type your answers. Then you're going to submit it back to the assignment.